Hello. Nate here with the Volunteer Tech Vlog on the Live Sound 101 YouTube channel. This is going to be a media report. Got my notes here to go through, but also this is like a big weekend for the media team here, because the TF5 is fully operational. So we've done the prep, we've done the install. Well, we've done most of the install. Yeah, pretty much all the hardware is there, and now it's just we're in a state of changing configuration. So the configurations, the room optimization, the EQ, stuff like that isn't fully baked yet. It's still in the process of being baked, but we went live and we had a service today, so there's still some kinks to work out. So from a live sound perspective, there's a little bit of like angst and kind of anxiety and kind of like, okay, the board's working, everything's doing what we thought it would do, but oh yeah, now we got to get into this habit. So there's a lot of workflow things that are changing. So you get into these habits, you get into these routines, and you have faith in the technology, and you understand what you're doing, and you're used to a certain solution, and now you rip that solution out, you throw in the TF5, and we did all the research and everything, but there's still all this workflow stuff. We just have to get in the habit of, okay, I come in, I do this, I do that, and boom, boom, boom. And there's a lot of menus to go through, stuff to figure out. Just from a volunteer perspective, but then also as the person setting it up and configuring it, Josh has been the main person kind of leading the charge on that, and now I'm starting to get really into it. So I wasn't actually mixing today, Wes was. So our newest audio volunteer had the privilege of using the board for the first time, but I showed up during rehearsal, just to kind of help out and kind of look over his shoulder. And I grabbed the iPad, I did a little bit of mixing. It was literally the first time I mixed remotely with the TF5, or even with the board. I actually didn't do a whole lot behind the physical board. I was over in Overflow mixing over there, and then I was over and just kind of mixing the broadcast a little bit. But it was, and I also, I used the iPads, the little handheld TF, I forget what it's called. There's like a TF monitor app and then a TF something else app. There's a couple different apps to do different things. But I was mixing from the iPad and then also from the laptop, and the laptop was not a touch screen, not a touch enabled laptop. So it was a little tricky to just navigate everything with the mouse, because I'm used to software audio console where you can just click left and right to change your channel selection. Here you actually had to use the little scroll pad to select, and it was just a little bit clunky. And with software audio console, you could also group your channels. So if you had 32 channels but you're only using 16 of them, you could like scrunch them all down so the 16 that you needed weren't chronological anymore, but they were the ones that you needed. And so there's just little workflow things like that. Got to figure out how to duplicate a mix. I'm not sure what they call that in Yamaha world. Basically capturing a snapshot, or basically, if you mix Fellowship Hall and now you want to mix broadcast, how do you grab a whole bunch of faders and settings and say, I want to take this whole mix and port it over to this whole mix, and then start from there and then make some tweaks? I'm not sure what the workflow is for that, so I got to figure that out. But the big things for somebody new, and no, we didn't just change the console. We changed some other stuff too. We got our power sequencers are also fully operational. So there's a system on button up in the bridge, as we call it, the media loft, the control room up there, which is up in a loft. And so when you hit that system on button, it obviously turns that sequencer on, but then it relays the message to the next sequencer that's in the loft as well, and then that relays the message down to the amp closet, so it turns everything on in the right sequence. And then you go to press that again, and you go turn system off, hitting that same switch, and then it turns everything off in the exact opposite order. So that's working now, so that's a really good thing. Still got to remember to turn the fan on in the amp closet, so I'm not sure if Wes and Josh remember to turn the fan on, so it might be getting hot in there. yeah, that fan is not on the sequencer. So now that's like kind of like another little project, just to get our fan to keep convection, keep the hot air getting pumped out and cool air pulled into that closet. That's a little kink I'm not sure if we addressed yet. But we should probably have a sequenced fan as well. And right now we've got essentially a bathroom fan on a dedicated light switch. So I'm gonna have to rethink how we're doing our cooling in that amp closet. So that's a big thing. But so for next week, so like the other big changes to workflow are like recording. We used to have like a solid state recorder. Now we can do that all through the Tascam. I'm sorry, we used to have a Tascam. Now we can do all the recording through the Yamaha TF5, and we can record right to a USB stick. That's just live to 2. And we also, Josh, this morning between services, set up Nuendo, so we can also multi-track to our old workstation PC, our audio workstation PC, which is dedicated to audio production, and it used to be dedicated to SAC, and now it's going to be dedicated to recording. So I guess we'll call that our DAW now, our digital audio workstation. So we got our first ever multi-track recorded service happening right now. So that's cool. And today is 3/19/2017. That is a very cool thing to be able to do. So the iPad, the name of that is K2. Name of the TF5 is Cassian. Stealing some names there from Star Wars. And to wake up the iPad, I'm an Android boy, so to speak. I was called an Android boy earlier today because I picked up the iPad. I'm like, I am not in the habit of doing this. What is the most efficient way to wake this thing up and get to where I need to go? And so Josh set that thing up with guided, I think he calls it some sort of guided setup, so you don't actually have to get into the iPad, but you wake the thing up, and by pushing a little button on the side, there's like a little slit button, a long slender button right on the side, not the circle. See, I kept hitting the circle at first because I'm not an iPad person, and it kept taking me to the camera. I'm like, how do I just get to the mix? So if you're a newbie when it comes to the Apple products there, you hit the little side button that wakes the thing up, and actually right now you should just hit the side button. It should load the TF5 remote mixing software or app right off the bat. So that was cool. Jukebox PC, we should just leave that thing sleeping. I think I guess we could shut it down or turn it on. I guess we got to have a discussion about that, whether we want our computers to be, because our computers aren't on the power sequencer. We have those so that they can remain on all the time, but now we just need operational standards. So do we want the computers to be on all the time and just asleep or hibernating? Or do we want to say, yeah, come in every Sunday, boot up the computer, and when you're done, shut it down? I don't know. I've got to think that through a little bit. I could probably go either way with that. It might make sense from a power consumption standpoint to just shut everything down. So Stereo 1 and Stereo 2 on the Yamaha TF5. Stereo 1 is, so these are our two program audio sources here that come right into the board. We got rid of our 4x1 stereo switch to simplify. So we just have two sources. We got rid of our dedicated CD player, which was a little sad for me. But if we want to play a CD, we can always just put it in the jukebox PC, and it's got a spinning CD drive in that computer, so we can just play back a CD from the computer. I'm a little sad to see the dedicated CD 5-disc changer go, but I understand. We get rid of that. We still have the same functionality. It's just packaged up a little bit different, but it simplifies the signal flow. So anyway, Stereo 1 is the jukebox PC running Spotify or whatever CD you load in there and use Windows Media Player. Or I think you can use, I don't know if you can use Spotify to play back a CD. You have to explore that a little more. But that's Stereo 1. Stereo 2 is our presentation PC, which is our video workstation. And that PC runs Pro Presenter. So that's Stereo 2 for any video that we play back, during the service there. And I think so the first big three things, and with that I'm gonna get driving. The first three big things that we got to go for any new volunteers, and this is gonna be kind of a group effort for the next few weeks. Josh is gonna be up there. I'll probably also be up there with whoever's volunteering, just to make sure I understand everything, learn everything really well, so I can then train other people. The first 3 things are: 1, got to learn how to power up and power down this thing because it's a different workflow. 2, scene recall. You got to learn how to recall a scene. So each band is going to have their own scene kind of set, and that's going to be the starting point. You got Pete's band, Kent's band, etc., etc. You got a Fellowship Hall look in case there's an event going on over there where everything's kind of set the way you want it for those events. So we're going to do scenes to manage that, and the master mute. So those are the first 3 things. You got to know how, if there's feedback or something, here's the button you push to turn. Here's the kill switch, essentially. So those are the big takeaways from today. And yeah, there is an awful lot to learn. There really is, but it's fun. I mean, it's exciting because we have greatly simplified the system, but there's going to be a learning curve, and that's going to be true with whatever we change to. So there is that learning curve. So there's a little bit of stress that comes with that learning curve because we want to get everything set up the right way, and we also want to set up volunteers for success. But when all is said and done, really one of the bigger goals we're working towards here is to make it easier for people to come in and be trained and get going. So yep, that's kind of where we're at. The TF5 is alive, and yeah, I think Wes did a pretty good job. It's a little tricky to mix in a new environment, and we just gotta learn all the like I said previously, the workflow. You gotta learn, okay, I know I need to turn, using your ears, listening, I know I need to turn the keyboards down. Great, I know I need to do that. How do I do that on the board? It's pretty straightforward because the channels are all there. But if I'm just at the app, how do I do that? Okay, am I in the right mix? Am I mixing front of house, or am I mixing monitors, or am I mixing overflow, or am I mixing broadcasts or in-ear monitors? So you have to be able to, that's like the first thing you got to figure out in the app, because that's primarily what you're going to be using, that little iPad. When you're down on the floor, how do I turn this thing down in the right mix, and how do I navigate the app? And it's just going to take some time to get used to that. So my reaction time on the app is pretty poor at this point in time. I mean, it was my first time actually using the board. I would say my reaction time was pretty bad. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but just fumbling through and like, okay, how do I get to EQ? And after you do it, after you figure it out, you're like, oh, that's pretty straightforward. You just kind of click here or you click there, but there's so much information there packed on that little screen, which, given there needs to be, because you got to have all that information somewhere. It's just a little challenging to do at first. But anyway, those are my first impressions. Was the app was a little bit tricky to navigate. I knew what I wanted to do, and I had to kind of figure out how to do it. And the same thing with the board. Even if you're on the physical board, I mean, the faders are, simple. It's pretty simple to navigate between mixes when you're behind the physical board, because you just select aux 1, aux 2, aux 3, or whatever, and it's blinking, and then the faders are assigned to those relative auxes, so it's pretty straightforward. And then if you push that button again, it just defaults back to the front of house mix. So the faders are pretty good. But then when you get into compression and EQ, you just gotta spend some time with it. So hence why I showed up today, to make sure I'm looking over people's shoulders, I'm seeing how to use this actual thing. And I think it's gonna be good. I think we definitely need to spend some time in the room adjusting master EQs, across the whole system, just to compensate for what's happening in the room acoustically, and what's happening with the speaker. So our, you know, every speaker has kind of a signature, or a what am I trying to say? Frequency. Can't think of the word. Cannot think of the word. Each speaker has this chart where frequencies from, you know, 20 hertz up to 20,000 or higher, it's kind of mapped out so you can see how that speaker performs over the spectrum. And you know, it's, you always hear people say, you know, they're going for a flat frequency response or whatever, but if you look at what's actually what the speaker is actually capable of doing in an anechoic chamber, that's one thing. And then you look at your room and you play, you know, pink noise in your room, and you see, well, what's happening, what is our room doing to possible EQ? And so you have to consider the room, you have to consider the speaker, and you have to make some strategic adjustments. And like I always say with EQ, less is more. You know, you just very, very strategic, very careful, very gentle EQ, according to what your speakers are doing, according to what's happening acoustically in that room. We've got to really put in the time to do that and adjust everything. So the delay, so time alignment has been taken care of. We calculated the time alignment that we need between our sub and our main, and we got, because they're not co-located, so we got that dialed in, and that made a really big difference. But now we got to go back and do some kind of gentle EQing of the system and just listen to a lot of CDs, listen to musicians, and just kind of see what's happening in that room, make some careful adjustments. And then also we want to get the level of our amps kind of dialed in a little better. Like right now they're kind of at a certain point, but we probably we got to train everybody up to make sure they're setting the preamp gains properly, to get good solid levels coming into the board. And then once we do get good solid levels coming into the board, we got to set our master faders. I think we should probably set like a min and max, maybe not a min, but a max on the master fader. So like ideally you want to run the board, the master fader at 0, and then you've got your amplifier gain set so that when you're at 0 and you've got a mix going, you're in the right spot. So that's kind of a I don't want to say catch-22, but it's a little bit of a push and pull where, okay, we're going to do this on the board and have this saved in our scene. So the master fader is, you know, we want it to be right around here when we're mixing, but then we got to have a relative level of that amplifier gain, so that we're in the right ballpark and you kind of know where you're going to be, all the while keeping one eye on the dB SPL meter, so you know kind of what SPL levels are hitting the back wall, and that kind of tells you what's happening before that. It's going to be, obviously we're measuring at the back wall, it's going to be a little bit louder inside the room, but that gives us kind of a relative level, so we're not, any given Sunday, we're not just jumping up to 120 dB SPL A-weighted slow or anything like that. So all right, those are my thoughts. Day 1 of the TF5. It is fully operational. We are functioning. And now it's just a whole bunch of learning and tweaking and optimizing. So I think for the next like 6 to 8 weeks, I'm going to be learning new little things about the TF5. We're going to be making little adjustments. And we're going to get this machine finely tuned. And I think it's going to be a beautiful thing. So that's my story. Thanks for watching the vlog here. Thanks for subscribing to the Live Sound 101 YouTube channel. This is where I talk candidly about doing live sound. And it's exciting. We have a board. We have a physical board again. We've been using software for the last 4 or 5 years. So it is, it's pretty neat to actually have a board and be using some of these tools we've been reading about for years and years and years, and actually getting one in-house, and good stuff. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your story. I know there's a lot of people just watching in the background here that never comment, and that's cool. That's cool, but hey, I'd like to hear your story, If you've got tips for me and the Yamaha TF5, I'd be happy to hear them. I am all ears. I would much rather learn from somebody else's mistakes than make the same mistake over and over and over again that everybody else has already made. So if you got tips for the TF5, if you're a TF5 expert, hit me up. I actually just joined a TF5 group on Facebook. It's like a TF5 users group. Actually, from somebody that commented on one of my TF5 videos. He told me about the Facebook group. So he happened to be the person that ran the group. So I commented, so I went up, and Josh and I actually just joined that group, and we're going to be working through some different things there. So yeah, go check out the Yamaha, the TF5 user group on Facebook. I'll be hanging out over there. All right, talk to you later.